Okay, so this is going to be, sort of a different type of video. I'm going to keep this as raw as possible. Hello, everyone. I am Vernita, Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist, and I'm going to share something with you that is unscripted, but you will see me read something, but it's not going to be in the edited version that I started off to do. So I am going to read this it's almost like a journal entry. I was writing down my thoughts and I was like, okay, God, you want me to share this. How do you want me to share? And I spent a couple days, trying to put it in the package so I can do the whole presentation thing. And then Holy Spirit was like, nope, just read what you have. So I am going to share something with you that uh, I'm going to share something with you. And then that will hopefully give you an understanding of why I'm starting or shifting my focus to a certain type of business model, message, all of that. So I want you to hear my heart, and I really hope you take heed to what I am sharing with you. And I'm being in this very vulnerable spot because it's not going to be as polished as I would like it, because it is like literally my raw notes that I am going to read. And if I could show you my computer screen, you can see it. I typed it all out just from my head, and I'm going to share with you today. So if you see me looking over, I am going to read. And the title of this, if you have not already seen it, is How I Lost $397,291. Right? So let me just go ahead and start. So this is what I wrote. I said, most business coaching consulting gurus always talk about how to make your first 10K, how to have $100,000 a month, or even have a six-figure business. And a few of them talk about having $1 million a year, and a very small percentage talk about what it takes to scale to an 8 to 9 figure business. Now, I've been in the rooms with them, and many have been mentored and coached by people at all of those levels, but only the elite level business owners share their failures in details if you know how to ask the right questions. So I found this out the hard way, and it took me years of frustration and devastation, and devastating losses to get the inside scoop. And today I'm going to share something with you before I reach my 7, 8, or 9 figure empire. So in a few videos, I shared how much I've invested in personal, professional, and business development, and it hits around the six-figure mark. And that's actually a small price to pay, knowing what I know now about income generation. But what I haven't shared and what I didn't realize is that a blind spot or oversight resulted in me losing $397,291 in a matter of weeks. Now, I won't share exactly what the loss was right now because it'll be easier for you to find a loophole and tune out. So if I said if it was like a car, you'd be like, well, I would never pay that much for a car. Or if it was a tax bill, you're like, well, I don't make that much to pay taxes anyway. Or if it was a house, you could be like, well, I rent or my house is paid off, so that's not me. So that's why I'm not going to give you the specifics, because I want you to just focus on the entire message instead of what the thing was, so you don't give yourself an out, because it's going to happen to you. So I'm going to share it at a high level about the cost of inaction. So it's easy to focus on ROI. We hear that all the time. And even in some coaching programs, when you're about to sign up for something, you're talking to somebody, you're like, well, what's the ROI? How do I know I'm going to get this back? So we know ROI is the return of investment, because you can do it and you experience it. You spend money, you get an increase in a tangible way. Sometimes it's intangible, like, I feel more freedom, I feel happier, I feel more alive, joy, but you can still see the benefits or the rewards, when you're talking about ROI. But there is another side to that coin: the cost of not taking action and not taking it soon enough. So at first I felt like a fool, just straight up felt like a fool. I have 5 degrees, if you did not know, and I feel like I'm actually pretty smart, and people have told me that I'm actually smart. So when this happened, I'm like, well, how did this happen to me? Right? Then I was pissed off, like straight up, because I went looking for support with different mentors and coaches, but I realized that I left with more questions than answers. And overall, I went through a period of a lot of trial and error to understand this life of entrepreneurship, but it was deeper than that. I realized that at any life transition or reinvention, it requires an identity shift. And it only cost me $397,291 to get the message. And I can smile right now, but at that time, it was not a smiling or laughing matter, right? So let me help you save time and money before you start looking for freedom or your next whatever number figures, right? So in all of my training, investing, coaching, and experiences I've obtained since 2020, I summarize everything in two categories. And while I'm grateful for both the lessons and the teachers, I don't believe experience is always the best teacher. So I did share in a few videos that you can't just be grateful for the lessons and hate the teacher, which is the situation, right? You have to be grateful for the situation too, because without that, and have an appreciation for the situation, because that's how you got your lesson. So that's why I said that I'm grateful and appreciative for both the lesson and the teacher. And I know we hear experience is always the best teacher, but I'm sharing this with you in this state and reading my raw notes because there are just some things you don't need to experience, right? So some of you I know will take heed into what I'm about to share, and I hope you come back and leave me a comment or send me a message about how much time, energy, and resources I have saved you. Some of you will fall into the category of, but I'm different, and you will find a way to experience these pitfalls for yourself. And I expect for you to come back and co-sign on this message that I'm sharing. Like, you know what? She was right. And then there'll be some of you who will be too terrified to experience this and won't even take the risk. And to you, I will say the cost of inaction compounds. It does compound. And so the longer you wait, the longer your CVS receipts of what could have been will be. So before I break this down, let me provide some visual that caused me to think about the cost of inaction versus ROI and how it led me to knowing the exact figure of $397,291. So you may have heard this before, but I'll say it again. And I've experienced this through two trainings. Like I heard this from Myron Golden and Dan Locke, and you may have experienced it from somewhere else. So in general, let's say your target is to generate $1 million in a year. Now you can go higher or lower because the dollar amount isn't relevant. But now calculate how much you have earned so far this year, or if wherever you are watching this video, what have you earned within the last 12 months? So for easy math, let's say you generate $100,000 so far. So remember, your target is 1 million, and so far you've only generated $100,000. So that means there's a $900,000 gap. Now, for you to have that gap, there are some things that you haven't learned or some things you haven't yet experienced. Now, let's celebrate the fact that you've generated $100,000 towards your goal. However, you can't just live in that celebration because your inner self is aware of the major gap, and there's still an internal battle happening at the subconscious level, and that's what we need to deal with. So if you do this, you'll be able to close the gap sooner, quicker, faster, but only if you're honest, right? So for me, the $1 million didn't freak me out. So I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, $1 million. Well, it did freak me out because I had already been doing some work, and working on my money mindset. So my gap is a lot larger, which is actually more painful, but it's okay. So just in case you're like, okay, that example does not resonate with me. So I don't lose you. Think about this. You're working in your current job and you're making $60,000 a year, and you want to generate $100,000 per year. Your gap is $40,000, and the same logic applies. You either haven't done something or learned something to close the gap, and the answer isn't always finding a better job. So keep that in mind, okay? We're going somewhere. I'm going to tell you. So now we're all caught up, and I'm going to share with you the two traps or pitfalls I fell into that cost me, you know the number by now, $397,291 in about 30 days, right? So first, when I started to feel the tug of having my own business, I jumped in with a coach and invested 5 figures straight off rip. And I didn't finish that program because I realized that I had a lot of underlying issues that were beginning to surface, such as insecurity, perceived fraudulence. Now, some people call it imposter syndrome. I don't use that word anymore because I did my research on perceived fraudulence, and that's more aligned to what I was feeling. And then I was having a major identity crisis. Shared a lot about that on several of my YouTube videos. I mean, this led me to investing heavily into the personal development, and I got close to some of the biggest names in the industry. And while the concept of personal growth and personal development is good, I believe most people are taking the wrong approach, and I was most people. And so I heard this phrase from Shanda Sumter, and it completely shifted my thoughts and beliefs about personal growth and development. I wanted to kick myself for not seeing it because I've studied and worked in a similar field for years. And my dissertation, what I studied on, became an expert in, is along the same line. So you're like, seriously? So instead of looking at personal development or personal growth as ways to improve yourself or work through personal traumas or become more self-aware, etc., think about this in terms of personal leadership. That's the phrase I got from Shanda Sumter. Now, you may have heard that from somebody else, but that's where I got it from. So that's what Shanda called it in one of her trainings, and it stuck with me. And in essence, how to take all those concepts and work to master them so you can start leading your life from a place of becoming. So becoming who you are, place of who you're becoming. This small tweak keeps you from staying in the broken, woe is me mentality, or in the space of I have to keep fixing myself before I do X, Y, and Z, and remain in this eternal state of self-discovery that you never put those practices to work in the real world. And so I've attended retreats, conferences, programs, etc., and everything was focused on fixing my shortcomings or weaknesses without a target. So I'm going to give you this example, and I wrote this in my unscripted letter to y'all. I said, you may have heard the concept is very popular in personal development, E plus R equals O. The events in your life, that's what E stands for, that you have no control over. R is how you choose to respond to those events, and O is the outcome. So while the concept can be applied in many aspects of life, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of the events of your life instead of working to reframe the events that cause you to be misaligned with your vision. So what do I mean by that? From a personal leadership perspective, if your vision includes becoming a business owner or a better parent or getting into better shape, you focus on the events that may have caused you to get stuck, finding ways to respond differently in your head or reframe it, and then focus on ways to create new outcomes. That way, you're not taking a stab in the dark and hoping that you'll land on the trigger to fix. And if that resonates with you, let me know if you understand what I'm saying. So personal leadership is about personal responsibility, or you may have heard it also as personal mastery. And so you are the captain of your ship and the CEO of your entire life, or you can insert whatever analogy fits for you, but you understand the difference, that small little tweak versus saying, well, I'm going to just go based on how I'm feeling so I can fit that versus the vision for your life. So in understanding this small tweak, I was also able to understand the Bible more and to ground personal development. And I shared this on a video too somewhere where even though I'm a Christian and know the Bible, there was still something to me where I was so drawn into what personal development was versus having it grounded in scripture. I went all off on a tangent and kept things separate. And then when I understood what this personal leadership was from that perspective, I was able to ground it back in scripture for me, right? And so I said, when you understand that God gave us dominion over the earth and that we're supposed to use our gifts and talents to become more than conquerors, then your approach to personal development shifts from the brokenness inside to really understanding and seeing yourself as the victor. And this is part of the mind shift that needs to occur before you can get the tangible results of closing the gap. So all of this is related. So to sum up this part, I don't want you to take another self-help course or join another personal development program without having a vision. And if you really want to understand what I'm talking about, I really walked you through a version of that. If you go watch my series, September is Significant on YouTube, to really understand the concept, I take you through, I think, about 12 or 13 steps of how you can experience personal leadership when you start with your vision. And so the second pitfall or trap that I fell into that cost me, say it with me, $397,291 was undervaluing, underutilizing, or not realizing the importance of my skills or learning new skill sets or prioritizing high income producing skill sets. So the great thing about this realization is that you don't have to become an entrepreneur, right? You don't have to, right, to close your gap. So depending on the gap, you can still keep your job. So everyone is ready to jump ship. But I'm going to take you through an example, and you'll start seeing like, oh, wait a minute, I've been looking at this wrong. And this is how I fell into this trap. So I'm trying to help you. So I read a few surveys and studies that stated that depending on where you are, mainly in the United States, and depending on your household structure, so single, married, partner, kids, no kids, whatever, dog, cat, seriously, a good income can range between $150,000 to $300,000. And I learned this from Dan Locke, and it drove this home for me. And I was like, I wish I would have just listened or doubled down, but it's okay. I'm helping you. I went through this so I can help you. So I'm going to give you this example that I got from him, this concept, and it helped me to drive this point home. I said, if you're single and you earn about $60,000 a year at your job, then all you need to generate is an extra $90,000 a year to close a gap to the low end of the $150,000. And then you save and invest that money. You let it grow, and then you can purchase or create an asset that will generate about $7,500 a month over 12 months. So you can keep your job, do something, bring in about $7,500 a month, and then that will get you the extra $90,000. So boom, you're at $150,000 a year, right? But don't freak out because you're like, oh my gosh, what? I'm going to tell you something. And look, you're going to thank me, I promise. So I said, let's focus on a skill that you already have or need to develop. And let's say you focus on speaking. So a lot of people out there talking about speaking, but I'm gonna ground this for you so you don't fall into the trap. And it does relate to the cost of inaction, I promise. So if you found a way to speak twice a month and charge on the low hand about $3,700, well, $3,750 to be exact, then you now have closed the gap between $60,000 and $150,000. A lot of you are already out there in your careers, and you're out there speaking and training, or you're probably speaking on the side for, the church or the community or your organization that you're part of, a sorority, fraternity, whatever you're part of. But if you brought that into now charging for that, you can still work your job, speak twice a month, and boom, there it is. And take that extra money and do what I just said. That's how you can close a gap. And I said, everyone is so quick to quit their jobs or run into coaching, which bothers me, or hop on the next passive income trend when they're overlooking the solutions that will serve them in the long run. While I didn't get up and quit my job because I got fired twice, all of that's on my YouTube channel, I didn't double down on what led me to generate an extra $20,000 in a month while still working as a college professor. I haven't talked about that a lot. Because I was like, well, that just happened one time, but it happened. And it happened because all I did to generate an extra $20,000 a month was I spoke, I think I spoke about twice, and I led one 5-day long training and got paid that amount of money. And doing the same thing, similar things to what I did as a college professor. And that's why I was like, you really don't have to quit your job. But because I didn't double down on that, looking back on, I was like, duh, this is what everyone has been talking about when they're saying monetize your expertise. Now you hear that I even shared there's a way to monetize your expertise and your experiences, but that's not the full truth. And if you join my lead and leverage challenge, well, I'll probably put back out there again. I break this down because it's not just, oh, just go from your experience or your expertise and you can turn that into a business. That's not the full truth. I said they are mostly telling you to be a coach, to teach people from your pain, or to be a consultant to corporations without helping you or reminding you to take inventory of your current skill set and to see if they are viable in the market that you want to serve. Or they're not telling you to hone in on those skills or sharpen them or completely shift to a new skill set, which will generate income and allow you to have some reserve and stability before you go uh, completely off on your own, if you so choose to do that. So it's more than just coming from a place of what I just said. Just because you experience some pain, that's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that you just automatically jump to, well, I'm gonna help you get through your pain the same way I got through mine. That is not the move if you want to make that income sustainable and build a business around it, right? So I said, here's why I'm saying all this. A lot of top people we listen to and follow either had previous businesses before the ones we know of. So I'm taking you into the deep dark, secrets of what a lot of people are not sharing with you. So I've been in those places. I've been in those rooms. I've been on those Zoom calls. I've been up and close and personal in meetings, and even my mouth dropped when I, you know, made the connection like, wait a minute, right? So a lot of them had businesses before that failed. They failed before you even knew about them. So what you're seeing now is like the finished product, right? Some of them had revenue resources supporting them while they were failing in entrepreneurship. So a lot of us, especially if you're coming from being an employee to an entrepreneur, you're like, oh man, you're using your own money and burning through your savings and living on credit cards and things like that. But there are a lot of people who you've seen, and I know them, they had other ways of being funded. And so it was easier for them to fail because they were failing on somebody else's dime. Now, don't get me wrong, failing is still, it still doesn't feel good, but it's a lot different when you have a support system and you can fail and knowing that your basic needs are taken care of versus you are draining from your basic needs, right? Trying to make something work. Or a lot of them have started businesses super young, and so they already experienced those major setbacks, or they connected with the right people and they gave them a solid launching pad. So when you're looking at people, just take a look over a little bit and look at their background, because they may have been in one of those categories. Now, that's not taking anything away from the success that they've already achieved, but I want you to have a different perspective and understanding of why something may not work for you, or why you're trying to work so hard and you're like, what is it? There's a different cost of inaction, and this is what I'm helping you to understand. So this would not be well, I'm gonna share this. I told you I was gonna just read exactly what I wrote. So I worked with a well-known person, and I admired and thought that they literally came from the bottom, not realizing that they were given an opportunity to work out the kinks and build relationships in the type of container until they became one of the type of spokesperson for a particular organization. This led to more visibility, credibility, so forth and so on. Like all those things, positioning, messaging, all of it. They had time to work on those things in kind of like a container. And I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you only try what they did and you did not, and you're not getting the results that they were getting, it wasn't necessarily the environment. It was the opportunity to practice and sharpen a particular skill set. So like I just said, if you are watching someone and you're in their program and you're working with them and you're like, I'm doing everything that they did, well, you have to, it's not necessarily doing what they did, it's being in the environment. But stay with me, I'm going to break that down. So I hope I didn't lose you there. I said, so now when I had this epiphany, I looked back at a previous coach I had, and I thought this one was a little tricky. So this is not the one I worked the first one I talked about. This is another one. And so then there was somebody once. So this person, I was working with one person, and when I realized, like, wait a minute, you didn't start how you said you started. All right, no shade, but you weren't completely truthful. So then I found someone who had a similar background. They were a regular person, right? And I wasn't getting kind of results from them, and I thought they were a little tricky and scamming a little bit. But then what I realized is that they took a skill from someone else and put it to work, messy and all, and they learned two more skills and have practically made millions. So with this particular coach here, which I was like, wait a minute, okay, hold on, I'm going too far. Let me just go ahead and read it because look, okay. So this coach I was talking about, that was the regular person. They had still built up a business, but they were teaching a skill they learned from someone else, and it was all over the place, but they still had people coming in. And then they took that, because now I've seen them again. They built this massive empire because they learned something else from other people. And then I was like, oh, at first I was like, oh, you're just copying that person. But it worked for them. And then that's where I realized that there's a difference between imitating and copying. Imitating is following a model or pattern, while copying involves duplicating an original as closely as possible. And because I didn't understand the importance of looking at my skills as high income generating skills, I tried to copy a few of my earlier coaches because they said success leaves clues, or they were like, hook your caboose to my train, or just follow what I did, or if you're a coach, you're not doing what I told you to do this. And that wasn't me using my personal leadership. The previous coach I mentioned understood this better than me, but what they didn't know how to coach, and that's why it appeared as if they were scamming. Now they weren't. They just didn't know how to coach. And a lot of people who are saying they're coaches, they're actually consultants. And if you go in with the understanding that they're consultants tell you what to do to get the results. And if you focus just on the skill set, the consultant does their job. Now, the coach helps you figure out the roadblocks along the way to why you're not doing the things to get you your desired results. All right. So it wasn't until I worked with yet another coaching consultant that I realized that the first one was teaching the same topics and skills as this one. They literally modeled the framework until it became their own, and now it has morphed into an empire. So in case my thoughts were jumbled up, the third coach consultant that I had was teaching a skill set, and I'll just say speaking in business. They were teaching that, but it still wasn't connecting, because it's like, well, this is what I did, you should do exactly what I did. And that's not the way you approach this. What should have happened, which I realized, was you teach the skill set of this type of speaking for this environment, and give the skill set of building a business around speaking, and follow that, versus I did this, because just following their overall recipe is not going to get you the results. But if you follow the skill set recipe, you will get the results. And I can talk more about that later on. And so this is a time to deep dive. So there is a time to deep dive into transformational work and develop your own unique system, but there's also time to follow a recipe. The model that you see until you sharpen the skills you have or uncover where you need to learn new skills. So like I said, there's a time where you follow a model, and that's the part of success leaves clues. Like, there's a framework to follow. Like in business, you've heard this. There are really 4 things that you can do in business. That's what all businesses do. That's the model you follow, and you follow those things, and you learn the skill set of following it. But if you learn it from a particular coach or consultant, you can't copy exactly what they do, because that's not going to work for you. There are times where, so you follow the model, but then to do that deep work and to come up with things that are your own, then you can lay that on top of the model or the framework. Okay, let me know if you're tracking. So now understand things totally different. And it took all of about 4 years of and cost in the inaction bill of $397, $397,291. So to sum that up before I end this, there were two pitfalls for me. One, again, was just looking at personal development as, oh, I need to fix myself, instead of, oh, well, fix myself so I can be this better person, so I can get out there and do what I need to do, instead of looking at it as personal leadership with a vision, and working on those things to lead myself, lead my vision, then lead my company. Then the other part, or the pitfall, was not understanding skill sets and not relating them to high income producing skill sets. We all have them, but then you have to know which one is going to produce more income, or you go out and learn them, right? So it is a skill. And when I realized that it isn't so much about, people have this, like, they're just good at that just because. Some people are, but most people, when I peel back all the layers, they learned these things and they became these types of people that we see. And if you're failing and you're not getting the results, I'm telling you, it's one of those two areas. Either something is off with your personal leadership, or something is off with your skill set. And this is like the foundation if you're trying to grow a business, or if you're trying to make an advancement in your career, or anything in your life. And so for me, I can tell you, and I can go deep dive, at some point, of not understanding those things, because you're working, you're busy, you're doing things, but you're not doing the right things. And all of the things that you've learned, what you've invested in, they do work. Now I have gone back to every single thing that I've invested in with this understanding, and I'm like, oh man, it does work. Like the foundation part, not, just taking what they did and spitting it back out, but the foundational recipes do work, but they only if you understand personal leadership and come from that perspective, or you understand skill set, and as far as how can I use this skill set to close the gap. Because to close the gap, you're going to need to work on your mind to close the gap, to understand that it's possible, and then the skills to do the tangible things to close the gap. And you need both of those. All right. So I shared that with you. Let me know if you have any, comments, thoughts, questions down below. And I can't end this without giving you 3 things to do. All right. So now your cost of inaction could be significantly lower or higher, but the fact still remains that there is one. So you have 3 options depending on the type of person that you resonated with earlier. I gave you types of people. So number 1, you picked up exactly what I put down, and you know exactly what to do. So just to make sure, I want to invite you to check out my complimentary resources that I have below. There will be at least 1 training and 1 playlist for you to watch, and one of them you may have to register for, but it's on demand. It's complimentary. I want to just ground what we talked about here. Now, I got a lot of free resources, but I'm going to list the specific ones I want you to pay attention to, especially if you're focusing on personal leadership and understanding the skill set. So I will link those down below. Make sure you either register for the one and then you can watch it, a training, or you can just watch the playlist and go for and conquer from there, and let me know your thoughts. So if you already know, you know what, V, I got you. I know it. Just be sure to ground this into those complimentary resources. Now, number 2, the second group is you have an idea, but you don't know where to start and you would like direct support. So I do have a few spots available for a one-on-one intensive. So this is not about you making a long-term commitment, because I know some of you are probably over, like, I don't want to get into another 6-month, 10-month, 12-month coaching agreement, or I don't want to be in another group program, or boot camp. This is one-on-one, and it's a short amount of time, about 3 hours, that you can spend with me, and we can deep dive, and that information will be down below. It's called your Brilliance in Action Power Intensive, to where we can focus specifically on that, and then I'll lead you to the information down below. You get more details about that. Now, the third group is none of this resonated with you at all. You were here just to be curious or nosy, and that's totally fine. Thank you for watching. And if you stayed to the end, at least hit the like button and share this video to someone with someone, because you may have been the person to come gather the seed and then go spread it out for someone who may not even come across my page. So just send that to them. Just send this to them and let them listen, and don't hoard the information. You be the person like, I didn't get anything from it, but maybe someone else can. All right. And if you like this overall vibe, then go ahead and subscribe and stay connected. And it is my hope that understanding this conversation and looking at those two pitfalls, I do hope that you help and come join this mission with me. And this is why I've shifted my message and really start putting out there that my mission is to bankrupt 1 billion burial plots, where I help brilliant people live a life poured out above ground before all of their brilliance goes with them underground. And because of my cost of inaction, and that was just in the 30 days, there is a bigger one, but the more painful one was $397,291. And I was like, I can't let anybody else go by who have come in contact with me to continue to let their inaction bill compound. And then there is a way for us to close the gap. Now, we can't go back in time, but I do believe that God restores, and he will say, okay, now you're back on track. You're back into alignment. Now I can give you what, essentially the devil stole from you, or what the devil blocked from you. I do believe that, but we have to make sure that we get into the place and do our work here so that he can do his work, because he's not going to come down and save us. That's not how this works. That is why it is important for you to understand your personal leadership, and now with the skills and tool sets and gifts that God has given you, now you can put those things to work. And now that you're doing your part, he will do his. All right. So thank you so much for listening. And remember those 3 options. Watch the complimentary resources that I do have down below. Take the invitation to learn more about how to join the one-on-one intensive with me. It's very limited. I can't promise that it will stay around for a while, because it is one-on-one, but I want to make sure that the people who are serious about, let me at least get a jump start on this, before I do anything else. And then for those of you who just want to listen, thank you. Keep helping the watch time and the likes. And wherever you are, whether you're beginning your day or ending your day, remember to be well, to be empowered, to be bold, and to be brilliant. Until next time. Bye.